At this time, I'd like to introduce our first presenter, Kathy Ness. Kathy is a National Account Manager at CBORD. Kathy, I'm going to hand it to you.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. I'm pretty excited to have recently joined the CBORD team, and although I'm new to CBORD, I'm not new to its solutions, particularly when it comes to food management and nutritional communication in a college or university setting. Prior to coming to CBORD, I spent 9 years on the campus at the University of Wisconsin in Madison as a unit manager for dining and culinary services. So I'm very familiar with the growing demand to provide college students with current and complete ingredient, nutritional, and allergen information. So I'm pleased to be able to introduce our menu display interface to you. Today's students are becoming more conscious of where, how, and by whom their food is grown, processed, and distributed. They're looking for specific ingredients, calorie counts, and allergens when making food choices, and want to know which selections might be organic, locally sourced, or genetically modified. Food service teams need a way to provide this level of menu detail in a way that's both visually appealing and easy to update. CBORD's menu display interface connects back-of-the-house menu data to front-of-the-house digital menu displays, creating dynamic visuals that attract customers and provide necessary nutrition and allergen information. So this webinar, in partnership with Epicure Digital Menu Systems, explains how using ingredient, recipe, and menu data to build visual menu boards contributes to customer satisfaction and increases revenue for dining services. Also during this webinar, we'll have a chance to hear from our special guest, Chris from North Carolina State, who will share his experience during his recent menu display interface implementation. You'll also have a chance to ask Chris some questions. So first I'm going to give you a quick high-level overview of how the menu display interface works. So the data feeds you create with menu display interface will drive real-time menu data to your display system of choice. The CBORD menu display interface allows you to feed your FSS data to your presentation system with a standard web-based API. Using the menu display interface administration site, your menu and marketing teams can coordinate the selection of specific menus or specific menu items to be displayed on your menu boards. So that means for you, no more database queries, file exports, network administration, and permission headaches. You can set up your menu boards to communicate directly with your FSS menus to present your menu data in a dynamic fashion, changing real time as your menus change. So next we're going to hear from Ben. He's going to introduce himself, and then he's going to kind of give you a little more in-depth information on how the menu display interface works.
Hey, Kathy, thanks. Yeah, this is Ben Horan. I'm the product manager at CBORD for our food production systems. And Kathy, before I let you go completely, I know really just from the tone of your voice that you've had to do maybe jump through a lot of hoops to get visually appealing displays in front of your consumers. Can you give me maybe a little background to some of the things that you had to do when you were an operator to get those displays just right?
Sure. So what I needed to do is to create very specific slides with the menu data on them in a PowerPoint presentation within a template. And I had to do that every day and sometimes every meal, some stations every meal. And then we would save those PowerPoints as JPEGs, and then we would have to schedule them to our display monitors for specific times. So that meant every time we had to change a menu, we had to go back into our PowerPoint, change all of that information, save it as a JPEG, schedule it to the display monitors, and refresh again.
And really all of that's happening outside of any kind of CBORD system. You might be referencing a piece of paper or the service menu, but you're really just doing that all somewhere else.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, okay. So as you might imagine, Kathy's story may not be the only one out there in the world of our CBORD customers who's like that. I imagine that a lot of you are online today because you have maybe if not exactly similar processes, you feel some of that same pain where you might be using external tools, whether it's a spreadsheet or some other things to inform displays, and they're not as dynamic as you might like, but they may get the job done. Ideally, what we would like to see as your solution partner is you don't have to go through a lot of extra effort to get your menus in front of your consumers. You're already capturing a lot of this information in CBORD already, so why not give you an interface to make that as seamless as possible? So in the last 12 to 18 months, we've released the menu display interface for our food production systems, whether that's Food Service Suite or CBORD Fusion or NetMenu. Anywhere that you can have a service menu and a CBORD application can drive this menu display interface and present data in a way that a display provider can use. And I think you heard from just the effort that Kathy's put in, and I know a lot of you put in every day, the reason that you want to have that information for your consumers is that you know that they want it and they need it. They expect it everywhere that they are, whether it's on a phone or at a point of service or really anywhere in your operation. You should be able to provide the information that your consumers need about what they're eating. This is a critical component of service, engagement, and satisfaction going forward in your operations. And you've told us this really year after year, whether it's from direct surveys or our user group conference or any of our site visits. You've made it wildly clear to CBORD that engaging your consumers is one of your top priorities. Another one of your priorities that we hear loud and clear is to be more efficient with what you have. So not adding new systems and adding new things just because, but because they make sense. And yeah, you can go ahead, Mike. Just one more. Thanks. You work very, very hard to make sure your kitchens and your procurement and your inventory are as efficient as possible, but making sure that your end users, your resources have the tools that they need to be more efficient is just as important. So that's where something like the menu display interface comes in. And jump ahead one, Mike. So using the data that you already capture in FSS or Fusion or NetMenu, we can take that information from service units all the way down through the items, recipes in those menus, to the prices, nutrition information, allergens, all of that you're already capturing, and we can make it available to a display provider. And the best part, maybe, for the operators on the line, is that you don't have to do it in multiple systems. It's just there already in what you're already dealing with. You're not going to impact your production schedules or your production team. You can handle and deal with the menu display interface directly and leave the production team alone, make sure the displays look the way you want them to, and it all comes from the same data source. This is about the time where my voice gets really boring, and it's far better to see kind of a walkthrough of what that interface looks like. So, Mike, do you want to go ahead one more? So here's just a quick overview. One more click. Logging into a web interface, you can get into a representation of your service menu. You can make changes that you need either every day, right before service, during service, and then push that out to your display provider. We are lucky enough to have on the line some of our partners who've worked with customers of ours across the country in Epicure Digital, and we've got Michael Velasquez on the line, and he's going to walk us through sort of how this works a little more in real time.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Velasquez. I work for Epicure Digital. Once you decide to integrate with us, I'll be one of the people you talk to get your menu board set up. Mike, if you could just go ahead to the movie and then pause it. What you're looking at here is Epicure's content management system, just one of the main pages. This particular page is where you see a list of all the different meal periods for all of your different menus. This is a pretty simplified list here, but this is where you would preview your menus and also schedule them. So we're going to preview this smoothie menu. If you could pause here, Mike, please. Looking at this page, you see a list of some things called slideshows, text areas, RSS feeds, messages of the day. This is just an example of menu data that wouldn't be handled by CBORD but would also display on your menus. So if you have slideshows, you would manage them here, or messages of the day, or weather feeds, or something like that. Go ahead and play, please. We're going to preview a specific date where we have some menu data. And this is going to open up the menu and get the data from CBORD. And you can see I've actually put some mistakes in here on purpose just so I can show you how to change them. This is reading the data directly from the MDI. There's a little bit too much space above this mango-based smoothie. I think it should have a description. See, this category header called add-ins has an extra space above it. I feel like there should be a description there. And it also needs headers for the price and the calories. We're going to go into the menu display interface admin and go to your service menus. If you could pause it here, please. Once you integrate with the MDI, all of your service menus already appear here. So there's not much to do. You don't have to create this list. It reads from the menus you already have in FSS. Go ahead and play it, please. I'm going to preview the same date that we were looking at in Epicure system. And if you could pause it here, please. As you saw on the previous slide, this is a list of your items that are from the service menu you chose. You'll see the new things that are in the MDI are displays and categories. These sit on top of your existing data, and it helps you organize the way everything will look in Epicure. We also have descriptions and format codes, and these will let you add additional information for the menu displays. You can go ahead and play, please. One of the things you'll notice about this particular menu, and it happens for beverages or coffee menus, is there's multiple sizes. What we do on the back end is we will only display the name once, but then we will display both prices. Or if you have 3 or 4 sizes, we can display those. And this works by, it's all programmed by us on the backside so that it doesn't affect your production menu, but you aren't going to display all the sizes at once. I'm adding a description. I'm deleting these extra spaces. And now to change the category headers, we're going to go to a different area of the MDI. We're going to go into MDI settings, category settings, and this is a list of categories that you create for all your menus. I'm going to add a little description for the add-ins. And you can see in the format code, that's a little, I have an extra space there. I'm going to delete that. You can pause here, please. Another one of the things that we can do is you'll notice that the add-ins section of this menu has a different number of columns than the rest of the menu. Everything else has a column for calories and 2 prices, but the add-ins only have 2 columns. We can do all this programmatically in the background so that you don't have to, so that you have to do as little work as possible. If you could go and play it, please. And pause it again, please. Format codes are just a combination of special characters and plain text, and we interpret it in the background so it displays properly. I know that the add-ins has only 2 columns, so I've only put the formatting codes that will display just the 2 columns as opposed to 3. Go ahead and press play, please. I'm going to save my changes. Once you've made all of your changes to one or more menus, you refresh the data and settings. This can take different amounts of time based on the size of your database, but because you can make all of your changes beforehand, you really only have to do this once.
And just a note from CBORD on that, you're basically refreshing a cache. That means that Epicure, as a provider, can read information out of that cache data and not put any load on your production database. So this does the fetching of that information once, and then you're done until you need to make any other changes.
And once you've refreshed the data, Epicure's system is checking the cache every few minutes or so for new data. So once you've done a refresh, I don't know if you saw it, but this menu refreshed on its own. So all of your boards would just update automatically in the background. If we go to that next slide with the map. This is just an example to show you how there's a 1-to-1 ratio from the MDI onto Epicure's menus. I've got some arrows just pointing at how everything might relate to your menu. And in a sense, what we try to do is what you see is what you get. So if you look at it in the MDI, you see them in the correct order, you know that that's pretty much what it's going to look like on the display. And also using Epicure CMS, you have the ability to preview it in real time. That's all for me. I think Harvey is going to speak to you now.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Michael. It's been a pleasure working with CBORD to develop the CBORD menu display interface. And welcome everybody for joining us today to understand how your CBORD back-of-house menu and nutritional information can be displayed in your front of house on LCD menu boards that automatically change every day at each meal period at all of your food stations. It can even display changes made in the middle of a meal to substitute for a runaway hit. No more printed menus need to be scheduled to put up the JPEGs or PDFs, anything at all like that. Just a steady flow of consistent, reliable information that's available. The next question, though, is how do we present all of that information? Next slide, please. An increasing number of institutions are adding digital menu boards to their new and existing dining facilities every year. One of those is North Carolina State University, where we have 5 food stations in one of 6 food courts at North Carolina State that's displaying menus, a total of 44 digital menu boards on campus, including retail and all-you-can-eat residential dining facilities. This particular menu is one of the menus running in the on the Oval Food Court. For many years, NC State used the Epicure Digital Classic manual entry menu system. However, as a premier CBORD client, they pushed both CBORD and Epicure to integrate our systems in order to increase their efficiency, accuracy, speed of service, and student satisfaction. At Epicure, we uniquely integrate our expertise in software technology and restaurant operations to create digital signage systems that solve our clients' complex menu engineering and point-of-sale marketing issues. By creatively combining CBORD's menu and nutritional data with motion, imagery, food photography, and good menu engineering and graphic design, we produce visually compelling multimedia menus that help to enhance the dining experience. And we call this experience the cure for the menu board, B-O-R-E-D. Now let's take a look at them. Let's go back to that previous menu, please. Let's take a look at the menu on screen. It's the deli menu at NC State in the on the Oval Food Court. It changes on a 28-day menu cycle, serving breakfast, lunch, dinner, and late night. The animated food photography and animated logo are served from our cloud-based centric content management system. All of the menu data on the left-hand side of the menu board, including the category headers, menu item names and descriptions, calories and traits for the menu labeling icons flow out of CBORD from the back of house. Every item includes price, calories, and up to 5 menu labeling icons of the 10 icons used campus-wide on all of their menus. One of the most powerful features of the CBORD MDI is that it was designed as a whole new layer, allowing you to continue to use your database as it exists, assigning your recipes to whatever menu boards and categories as are needed to design the board effectively. Furthermore, because of the seamless integration between the Epicure digital menu system and the CBORD MDI, you'll continue to enter all of your recipes, menu planning, and scheduling in CBORD. Whenever a change affects a currently displaying menu, as Michael explained, the Epicure digital menu system will automatically refresh the board. Now let's take a look at the next screen. Let's see how we display nutrients and menu labeling icons for all of the choices at a build-your-own sandwich station, which is what we're looking at right now. Specifically, take a look at the 2 right columns of ingredient choices in the deli station menu. They display bread, protein, and cheese choices, and each have their own calories and menu labeling and allergen alert icons. And that's what people want to see. They want to see what they're choosing. When they're choosing it, they want to know what's in those items. It is interesting to note that NC State chose to display calories only to comply with the new FDA restaurant menu labeling requirements, but that's a discussion for another day. On the other hand, they display 10 menu labeling icons and allergen alert icons. If you take a look at the allergen alerts on this board, you've got egg, soy, nuts and tree nuts, dairy, if you look at the legends on the bottom, gluten-friendly, healthier choice, vegan, vegetarian, local, sustainable, and raised without antibiotics. Let's go to the next slide, please. Now, you may wish to include more nutrients than just calories, like sodium, fat, carbs, and protein on this 3-screen menu board. Let's take a look. On this 3-screen menu board, it has salads on the left board, smoothies and fraps on the middle board, beverages on the right board. Now let's look at how we slice and dice the data on the salad board. If you take a look, you'll see that we have our protein choices and our dressing choices separated out at the top. They each have their own serving size. They each display calories, sodium, carbs, protein, and fat, and can display up to 5 different menu labeling icons. And there are about 10 different icons on this particular board that they can be used. You can see they're rather small, but on the legend at the bottom. Another feature of the MDI allows you to enter multiple price points for menu items. For example, take a look at the 3 price points on the beverages menu on the right. Although the CBORD system only stores 1 price per recipe, working with CBORD, we developed the menu display interface to display multiple price points for a recipe when it's used on a menu board. In fact, we could display different prices for the same recipes on different menu boards in different venues, all without adding new recipes or rearranging the underlying data. And it's features like this that make the menu display interface a very, very robust tool. Next slide, please. Here we're looking at our greeter board. A greeter board is a multi-purpose menu board typically installed at the entrance to a cafe. It's designed to communicate with guests and staff. It displays all of the food court's daily specials, as you can see on the right-hand side. We'll call that our menu module. It displays all of the food court's daily specials at each of the food stations. For example, although the grill station serves all types of burgers, only the special burgers of the day are listed. And as with most of our greeter boards, the menu displays menu labeling icons, but no nutrients, leaving the nutrients to be displayed at the point of sale at each food station. The greeter board is also valuable for displaying items at a station with too few items to merit its own board. For example, a soup station with 1 or 2 soups may not have a menu board, but we can certainly list that on the greeter board. In addition to displaying menus, greeter boards give you simple tools to upload slideshows of images and movies, both with and without captions. This greeter board has one large slideshow with a caption in the middle of the board and a smaller slideshow with no caption along the top that's static and is just used to promote their We Proudly Serve Starbucks Cafe. Although this hospital system likes to display food photography, most of our clients prefer to use their slideshows to educate and to promote and market events, seminars, and other related institutional programs. In fact, many of our clients, most of whom are food service and nutrition personnel, prefer to have their marketing departments handle their slideshows. The greeter board also features text messages like nutritional tip of the day on the bottom of the left column above the icon legend, a live RSS news feed as seen above the nutritional tip, and then what we call a looping text block announcement on the top of the column for easily and quickly entering and displaying text messages. Regarding RSS feeds, there are all types. For example, we provided menu and greeter boards for doctors' lounges with sports, business, economic, and entertainment feeds. Next slide, please. This is just a library of the menu labeling icons that we use. As you can see, there's egg, pork, beef, wheat, high fiber or gluten, heart healthy, spicy, very spicy, popular, soy, dairy, tree nuts, peanuts, nuts, fish and seafood, shellfish, gluten-free or gluten-friendly. We have to be very careful how we list that because not everyone actually has a perfectly clean, gluten-free environment. Go slow-o icons. And of course, then there's vegetarian, vegan, organic, local, sustainable. A lot of people are concerned about antibiotics in their food, so raised without antibiotics. High sodium, farm to table, religious icons like halal and kosher, and of course, when something's not analyzed, we even provide an icon for that. And this concludes my portion of the webinar, but I'll be back to answer questions after we hear from our next panelist. Now here's Kathy Nash to introduce Chris Finham.
Thanks, Harvey. So next, I'm really pleased that Chris is here to join us today. Chris is the Sustainability and Nutrition Specialist at North Carolina State University, and he is going to share with us his recent menu display interface implementation experience, and you'll have an opportunity to ask him any questions that you think he might, that might be good to hear firsthand from him. Chris?
All right, thanks, Kathy and Harvey. As we said before, this has been a really long time coming for us here at NC State. We previously started using Epicure a while back, and as Harvey said, it was the static system. It was great for what we needed at the time. It gave a very nice menu display. The issue that we saw with it was just it wasn't connected to our food production database. So we don't have a very large population of students that have allergens on campus, but they're very, very loud, as I'm sure most of you know. As far as for the retail units, we stuck with the Epicure for a while, and then we went for the residential. We were using a method similar to Kathy, but we were using menu cards, printing them out every day, and there was a separate database, and it just became too much of a mess. In light of that, so we decided to make an integrated system. So we went to CBORD multiple times and got with Harvey, and they created the system. We started using it, I guess, about 2 or 3 months ago. We've been testing it for a while now. We've got all the retails are almost ready to go right now. But the best thing I think about it is the MDI itself. So it takes all the data that's in your CBORD interface now, and it pushes it out to this MDI. And once it's there, you can manipulate it any way you want. So with us, we rely heavily for production on our CBORD system. So obviously, we don't want to put everything on a menu board that's in our our service menu. So with the MDI, it allows you to kind of pick and choose what you want to put and display in any order you want to display it, while still maintaining that data that's in CBORD. So that way, you know that the chicken wrap has 500 calories, and you know it has gluten and dairy. That's pretty much how we got started with it. And I'll be around for any questions.
And on that note, we are going to open it up to questions. Again, I just sent a note to everybody who's on the line. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them either through the chat box or through the Q&A tool on WebEx. We have a handful already in, so I will get started with these. So the first one will be for Chris. So now that you're past your implementation, what would you pay more attention to if you had to do it again?
Definitely setting up the service menus. The way we have our service menus currently set up, it's ideal for production, but not so much for displaying menus, which is where the MDI came in and came to be a lot of help. There'd be a few tweaks I'd make to that, but other than that, that's pretty much it. The system basically lends itself to anything you want to do with it.
And next question for Chris. How much time and effort are you getting back, either personally or in the entire dining department?
None yet, but I will be very soon. So we've put a lot of hours into this so far, but this is going to allow me, because before we'd have to log into every Epicure board, and as Harvey said, I think there's 44 on campus. We'd have to log into every one, compare the data, make sure what they're serving is actually on the board, make sure the allergens are correct, make sure the prices are correct, and that was an everyday process, and that, you can imagine, very painstaking. So with this new system, since it runs off the production unit, everything in their service menu they're going to have to be serving anyway, so we'll know the data is correct.
When I was an operator, we had one person worked about 20 hours a week to make sure all our menu boards were correct and current.
Yeah, it's a very painstaking process.
And this is Harvey. One of the issues that we had when we were developing the MDI was that we started off working with NC State, and their service menus, as Chris was explaining, were not ideally set up for menu board displays at all. And that was one of the big factors in designing the MDI, was to make sure, and I give CBORD a tremendous amount of credit for this, was to make sure that we were not going to disturb any of the underlying data, so that regardless of how an institution sets up their CBORD database, by using the MDI and offering this whole new layer, it gives us the ability to take that data and present it any way the client wants to see it on screen. Is very, very powerful.
Yeah, it's great. It's a really great tool. I mean, it's a lot of coding to start with since we have so many venues. But once it's done, it's done. It stays in there. It carries over from day to day. Making a menu change is as simple as taking it out of the service menu and just refreshing the feed. So it's once everything's coded and set up, it's a very simple process.
So the next question would be for Kathy. Kathy, when you were working at UW, what role was it that was responsible for getting your menus into a published state?
Well, we had several different roles because we had to make sure that the menus, we also had net nutrition, so we had to make sure that the menus were displaying properly, and that was our dietitian's role, to make sure that everything in net nutrition was being displayed properly. We had paper menus that an office assistant would create and display, and then we had an office assistant and also a student who would work on just menu displays. That was their whole job, was to take all of the data out of the menus and get it formatted and create those slides to make it look presentable and make sure that it was correct, because there was no live feed from the service menu, so it all had to be double checked. So there was a handful of people, just kind of depending on where the information was going, that were responsible for getting the information in different ways. With this, it's the same feed as it would be like to net nutrition. So if you were changing something on your service menu, and you change, it would feed to both, which is great, because then you only have to change it in one spot.
Okay. Next question. This one would be for either Harvey or Michael. How many hospitals does Epicure work with?
We probably work with about 50, 60, 65 hospitals right now.
Okay. And you mentioned PHI, and do you have any more detail that can be provided to an IT team on PHI?
So PHI is private health information, and the way the MDI is set up, when we're working with a hospital, the hospital production server has all sorts of private health information on it, but the MDI works as a traffic cop and doesn't allow Epicure or any third-party vendor to have any access to the private health information. So we have no HIPAA, there's no HIPAA concerns, so there's total compliance.
Yeah, hi, this is Ben with CBORD. I'll chime in on that as well. The MDI really only looks at service menus and the items and recipes in those menus. It doesn't cross over into any of the patient information in the NSS or room service systems. And if there is anyone online who does have a specific request or a specific IT concern, please let me know and we can have a discussion with them. We've got a few flow charts that show sort of how the systems can be set up to hopefully alleviate any of those concerns.
Another question here. Our site is getting ready to create service menus. What advice would you give as we create these service menus to make them MDI ready? And I guess any number of people on the line could probably answer that.
Sure, and I'll start. One thing that we do know about implementing service menus in Food Service Suite is that there's a great variety in the world out in production, and what works for NCSU because of their physical setup, whether that's a food court with many different serving stations that all happen to use the same service menu, and they use service courses to kind of chunk those out so that each of those stations knows what they need to take care of, to someone else who might use a specific menu for every individual service station. I would say talk to your implementation rep because they'll know a little bit more about your business if you don't have someone who's working with you from CBORD to do that. Probably the best thing to do would be to reach out to me or even into the user community to look for other locations like yours who are going to be doing this so that, one, you can meet your business needs, because internally the production needs from the service menu are going to really be the very most important thing that you're going to take care of. But if you can do that with an eye to, okay, now we're eventually going to have some of these things appear on a menu board and a menu display, you can make maybe a couple of choices about sizing and pricing and how many recipes you use to do that kind of thing. Harvey mentioned a few things in his presentation about having a similar menu item name so that if you do have different prices or different sizes, it's easier to parse out for the display, that kind of thing. And it could help you with your even things like disposables. So if you have, how many 16-ounce coffees you're selling, then obviously the cups for those things are also in play. So not a small number of things to think about, but probably very focused based on your business.
Also, I'll add in, Ben, setting up the service menus, separating everything out. If you've got a food court style type of venue, either separating them out by service course, by different restaurant is helpful, or just having a different service menu for each individual restaurant would be helpful as well. Just because when that data goes all out, it's easier to sparse it out if you look at it by unit or by service course.
Next question we have is this information only pushed out to digital screen displays in the dining retail areas, or is the same information also available on mobile devices?
It's Harvey, I'll take this. So basically we will provide you links that you can put onto your websites that then anyone can access, and it can see these digital menu boards as they appear on screen in the food courts. They can appear on your smartphones, your computers, and your tablets. And so any change, and in real time.
Go ahead. Sorry, Harvey.
I was going to say in real time. So if you make a change in the middle of the course of meal period. It's going to affect not only the LCD menu boards, but it'll populate out onto the smartphones and tablets as well.
I'm going to back up to Linda's question here. It says, can the system adapt to a 4-week menu cycle and run seamlessly and run week to week? Yes, it can. So basically the data in MDI is fed from the service menu. So as long as your service menus are set up in a 4-week cycle, it'll be pushed out the same way.
And this is Harvey again. When we contract with our clients, we're not just providing technology. We're actually menu engineering and designing the layout and the creative look and feel of the menu boards. And when we study the menu, we really do study your menu as it changes at each food station, right down to each day during the cycle, including Saturday evening, for example, when things may slow and you might consolidate food stations to make sure that we have menus to have templates that fit all of your requirements. So we spend a really good deal of time, about 4 weeks of an 8-week process before delivering a system is spent just on studying your menus with you and designing them so that the look and feel of the menu that you see on screen really is serves its purpose. It makes, to us, a good menu is one that gets people through a line quickly. It not only looks good, but it answers questions. It doesn't raise questions. So it's good for the user, and it's good for the operator as well. It's a good customer experience as well as a good operator experience.
Next question we have here is, how much IT staff time is needed for this feature?
If that's from the user end, as far as NC State, I was pretty much the only one coding all the data. It's not terribly hard. You just have to set it up. I mean, the CBORD has really worked to make it very easy to use, the MDI. There's not a whole lot of technical stuff that you need to do to it, really. As far as setting up the monitors and stuff, I guess Harvey could probably speak a little bit more to that.
The way our system is set up physically, all that gets installed on campus are smart LCD panels. We specifically use Samsung LCD panels with what they call their built-in Samsung Smart Signage platform. They connect either wirelessly or over Ethernet on your network, and they connect directly to our cloud server at Amazon Web Services. So that they're very, very simple to install. Literally just put them on a wall, hang them from the ceiling, and no computers on property to drive them. So it's a very simple installation process. What does take time is getting through IT. IT likes to, needs to bless everything that happens on their networks, and will meet whatever security protocol requirements that they have in terms of being able to access from our cloud server to the MDI. That's the only access we actually need on campus. So our cloud server reaches out to the MDI to ask those questions about, okay, it's meal period at the deli in this food court, and I'd like its menu data right now. And it comes back to us as XML files that we parse out and display in these beautiful HTML pages on LCD boards or on your phones and tablets.
And to kind of add to that, we're running the MDI not on our food production server just because we have other things on there, but we have a separate server that we're running the system off of. And it was a lot, getting access was it's going to take time, like Harvey said with IT, just allowing the firewall exceptions depending on how stringent your IT departments are.
Okay. Looks like this question might be being answered right now, but I'll just say it out loud just in case. We don't self-op on our campus. We don't self-op our campus dining services. Do you work with providers such as Sodexo to issue this menu information?
So I can
absolutely.
Yes, I was imagining Harvey's answer was going to be absolutely. From the CBORD side, obviously the feed data that we're talking about today is based on our systems, but Epicure isn't really married only to CBORD, so I'm sure Harvey has a solution for anyone who might be using a food production system.
And there are Sodexo clients that use CBORD systems.
There are, that's right, yeah. And yeah, we try to get as many as possible, that's for sure. But if you're not using a CBORD system, then I'm sure that doesn't preclude you from discussing your needs with Harvey.
Question for Ben. Is there a minimum version of CBORD that we need to use for this?
Yeah, probably a couple of things on that front. The minimum version would ideally be in the 12.6 family, so 12.6. We've just recently released 12.13, so we're talking about really in the last calendar year, if you've upgraded to a version of FSS, Food Service Suite, or CBORD Fusion or Net Menu, then you're in the wheelhouse. If you're a little older than that, we can have a discussion. So if you're in the version 11, we have some options potentially, certainly with Epicure to work with, but it's not necessarily the same user experience as the MDI. And then just to be very specific, since I know we have a lot of healthcare and hospital customers on the line, the Food Service Suite, if you already have the Nutrition Service Suite, NSS, or Room Service Choice, that is fantastic. But to use the MDI for service menus, you do need the Food Service Suite component of CBORD as well.
Ben, why don't you talk for a few moments about the difference in the design and the use of the MDI as compared to the user experience that your users are reporting compared to your,
Yeah, so classically with FSS, and I think NC State might still be doing this a little bit with labels, we've had an ability to export data. So you could create a comma delimited file that includes all the menu items, but it's a very manual process. So a user has to actually open the application, FSS, run that export, go find the file, open it in Excel, kind of verify that everything looks good. And then that can be sort of the data source for what you're trying to do. And you would be doing that for every unit, for every meal, every day. And then if there are any changes, everybody's got their own way of handling that setup. With the MDI, you would install basically a website on your network, and it could be on its own server or it could be on a shared web server. This is not it's not a huge high-powered web application. You log into the administrative site and you can drag and drop. You can update menu items. You can choose menus even within a service unit to select. You can choose diets that they are nutritional goals that they are linked to. So whether it's the standard 2,000 calorie goal, if you have your own internal nutritional goals that you'd prefer to use instead, you can do that. And then really once you've kind of done the arranging on screen, all in a browser, really from anywhere that you can access that admin site, then the data is available and ready for consumption by Epicure, a menu display provider.
And we had a similar question about the MDI. Do you let the unit staff make changes in the MDI, or is it controlled in a central office? Currently, I control all the data in the MDI. Once we go live with everything in the fall, I'll go by unit basis to see what access they may need. But as long as you keep everything straight in the service menus, as far as the production goes, the MDI should pretty much take care of itself as far as the displays go.
Yep. And you can kind of limit that access based on unit as well. So if I'm a manager of Unit A, I'm really only going to be able to get to my own menus. I can't see the whole campus. I can't see menus for all the other units on campus.
Right.
That wraps up the questions I have here. Did anybody have any questions? I know sometimes people will send them directly to any of the panelists. And of course, if anybody on the line has another question, we'll give it a few more seconds for you guys to type it in. labeling icons be created?
Repeat the question.
Can custom menu labeling icons be created?
Yes. You just have to be careful when you create these icons that you don't include very small print in them. You know, icons that work on a print menu, for example, may not work on a screen. We're often called in to use icons that have been in place in an existing system that has been primarily print only, and when we then go to apply those icons to LCD screens, they don't work as well. So all that has to be taken into consideration when you design your icons. And we'll be happy when we have a client to work with the design of those icons as well. And of course, anyone could use the icons in our library. There's no charge for that.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions. If anybody, oh, one more just came in. If 5 out of a possible 10 icons can be displayed, is there a priority that is set with the icons to decide which do not show?
It's all based upon your recipes. The number of icons included in a recipe. So the maximum number of icons that might appear for use in any one recipe, that's what determines how many icons are going to be displayed on the screen.
This may have been asked already, but are traits and CBORD linked to icons in Epicure?
Yes. That's the mechanism we use to give Harvey's team the information they need to display an icon. So if you have a trait for a vegetarian that's assigned to your items or recipes, that's what they will look for to find to match up with that icon for display. Same with allergens. And just to go back, I think, quickly for some clarification on the last question, and Harvey, please correct me if I'm wrong, but every site, so in Harvey's examples, he had 10 potential or identifiable allergen or other traits on the screen, but you're not really limited by that number. I think what you're limited by is your ability to communicate effectively with your population. So, you know, in CBORD, you can have any number of traits. You can have the big, you know, the big 8 allergens, and at some point, looking at a line of icons gets a little bit out of hand. So probably in the design phase, you need to figure out what is really important for your population to understand with that display.
The maximum number of icons that we've ever displayed next to one particular item has been 7.
That's not a limitation of the system, it's a limitation of space. So.
Yeah, and really comprehension, I think.
We have some schools that have maybe 20 icons in their whole library of icons, and they really break it down into quite detailed
great
refinements. It's really a question of what your nutritionist and director of food service wants, and how marketing wants to present this, et cetera.
Another question just came in. Can you do auto uploads of service menus full weeks at a time?
Well, I guess I can take that one. So, as far as the MDI goes, it's a live feed. So whatever's in your service menus will automatically be displayed in the MDI. So if you got the menu for the fall already set up for August, if it's in CBORD, it'll be in the MDI. There's no real uploading or anything. It's an automatic data transfer.
Yep, and from the CBORD technical side, you can limit. You know, you can say I only want to publish 2 weeks at a time or a month at a time. If you're still working on menus in the future, you don't have to push every single menu out for all time. You can kind of put a window around it if you would like. But then really Harvey's team just asks for the data they need at any point in time, and that's where the API does its work, so it's ready to go for them when they need it.
And speaking from experience, I would limit that window of menus just because it takes that much longer to refresh the feed with the more menus that you have in.
Yep.
Another question, can this be used web only without the service board?
You mean without LCD panels?
Yeah, I think that's what
that sounds like the question, yep. I'm going to have to start, I'm going to precede every answer with from the CBORD side. So from, with the MDI itself, it's really just an API makes data available based on whatever system is requesting it. So if it happened to be a website, then it happens to be a website. Harvey's team has a very specific way of getting at that data and then turning it around to the consumer that we know really looks good and also lends itself, obviously, to display boards.
And to specifically answer the question, if you came to Epicure Digital and said, I don't want to use LCD panels, I just want to use your system to display the menu boards on tablets and phones and computers, the answer would be yes, too. We could do that.
Okay, well, that was the last question I have now, but I've done this a few times, so I'm going to let it go a few more seconds just in case any more trickle in. I know we're almost up against the hour here. And I'll have contact information for both Harvey and Kathy coming up in just a second if anybody has any questions that they want to take offline. So
you can feel free to put.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, Mike, you can feel free to put my info up there if anybody has any questions from the user end.
Thanks, Chris.
So I just want to say before we get to that contact information for any of our higher education attendees on the line, if you're going to be at the NACUPS show in Nashville, the national show next month, both CBORD and Epicure will be there. CBORD will be booth 601, Epicure at 1348. So you can stop by and say hello to both teams, get some more information as you see fit. But other than that, I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. Everybody should be receiving a recording, link to the recording of today's presentation in the next 24 hours or so. And if you have any questions, you can contact Kathy or Harvey, and I'll put Chris's information up there in just a sec. We hope you'll join us for more webinars in the future, and I want to wish everyone a great afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.